In the heart of ancient Babylon, where the sun painted the ziggurats in gold, a young potter named Malak received a gift. It came from a wealthy merchant, wrapped in fine linen and sealed with a smile. "For your talent," the merchant said, "a token of my appreciation." It was a set of rare tools, sharp and gleaming, unlike anything Malak could afford. He bowed deeply, unaware that he had just accepted more than metal and wood. He had accepted a silent chain. In Babylon, gifts were never merely gifts. Beneath the perfume and polish, each present bore a weight, sometimes of expectation, sometimes of obligation. The wise elders often whispered, "Gold without agreement is rope without knots. It tightens in silence." But Malak was young, eager, and hungry for greatness. He used the tools with joy, his hands crafting pots so fine they drew nobles to his humble stall. Business bloomed, and with it his pride. Weeks passed. One evening, the merchant returned, his tone now changed. "A small favor," he said casually. "My cousin needs clay from the royal quarry. Say you need it. Your name carries favor now." Malak hesitated, but fear of seeming ungrateful silenced him. He agreed. The debt, though never spoken, began to grow, not in coin but in power. And power, in Babylon, was a form of interest. Word spread that Malak had pulled strings for the merchant. Some envied him. Others grew cautious. One old scribe, hearing of the tale, shook his head. "A gift in Babylon is a hook," he muttered. "Only the wise see the line before the pull." Malak laughed it off, dismissing the warning. He believed the debt paid. But Babylon does not forget, and neither do those who lend under the veil of generosity. Months turned to years. The merchant's requests became more frequent, more burdensome. "You owe me," he said once when Malak resisted. "Do not forget who placed those tools in your hands." Malak's stomach turned. His art began to suffer, not from lack of skill, but from the weight of unseen chains. He no longer created freely. He labored under obligation. And yet, no coin had ever changed hands. One night, Malak sat beneath the stars, tools idle beside him. He remembered a tale his father once told of a Babylonian prince who accepted a stallion as a gift from a rival king. The horse was magnificent, but each ride was watched, each choice questioned. In time, the prince was no longer a rider, but a servant. The stallion was never free. It was a bridle wrapped in velvet. "Why did I accept it?" Malak asked the knight. "Why did I not ask the cost?" He now saw the merchant smile for what it was, not kindness, but calculation, and he realized a truth buried deep in Babylon soil. That debt does not always announce itself with contracts. Sometimes it enters through gifts, through favors, through smiles that expect silence in return. The next day, Malak refused the merchant's latest request. "I am no longer yours," he said. The merchant's eyes narrowed, then returned the tools. Malak did. He laid them on the ground, each one heavier now with the weight of lost years. He returned not just tools, but the chain they represented. His hands were empty, but his spirit was free. And in Babylon, freedom was the rarest wealth of all. The city whispered of Malak's boldness. Some called him a fool, others called him brave. But the elders nodded in approval. "He has learned," they said, "that which costs nothing often demands the most." Malak returned to simple tools, handmade, imperfect. But his craft flourished again. With each pot, he felt joy, not debt, not obligation, just purpose. And so the story of Malak, the potter who returned the gift, passed into legend. Children were told, "Accept nothing blindly. Even the sun gives light, but it burns if you stay too long." In a world of silent debts and quiet chains, wisdom was the only true defense. Babylon remembered, and so must we. In the chambers of Babylon's great library, where dust and memory lived side by side, a scholar named Laron found Malak's tale inscribed on clay. He traced each cuneiform line with care, his mind wandering to the merchants of his own day. "How little has changed," he whispered. "The gift still binds, though its form has changed. A loan, a favor, a contract bathed in gold. They all wish the same lie. Take now, worry later. Laron taught at the school of scribes, where sons of merchants and nobles learned to wield not swords, but ink. One day he asked the students, "What is the cost of a gift?" A boy laughed. "Nothing, master. A gift is free." Laron shook his head. "In Babylon, nothing is free. Every gift carries the seed of a debt. The wise question not the value of the gift, but the silence that follows its giving." He told them of a woman named Enela, once a servant in the palace. She received a bracelet from the queen, a token of favor. She wore it with pride, until she was asked to spy on another servant. "A small task," they said. "After all, you are trusted." The bracelet shone on her wrist as she betrayed a friend. She later wept not for what she had done, but for the change she hadn't seen when the gift was clasped. The students sat in silence. One, a merchant's son, raised his hand. "But how can one live without accepting help?" he asked. Laron nodded. "Help is not the enemy. It is the unspoken bargain that is. Before accepting anything, ask, what might this cost me later? Will I owe loyalty, silence, or action I would not freely give?" In this, Babylonian wisdom spoke clearly. Discernment is a currency of freedom. In the marketplace, an old man watched a young couple accept a generous offer from a lender. No payments for a year. The man smiled. "A gift to help you begin." The old man approached them after the deal was done. "You have not begun," he said softly. "You have entered, and the door you walk through does not open outward easily." They looked puzzled. "You will understand," he added, "when silence becomes debt." In the courts of Babylon, judges weighed not just contracts, but intentions. One case spoke of a farmer who received free grain during drought. No agreement was written. Yet when harvest came, the lender demanded half the yield. "You ate for my mercy," he said. The farmer protested. "You never said it was a loan." The judge ruled not by law, but by wisdom. The silence after generosity is the loudest part of the deal. Malak's story reached even the temples, where priests debated divine gifts. "Even the gods," one priest said, "ask for offerings after blessing. Why do we think men would give without desire?" His words unsettled many, but the truth lingered. Even the divine expects return. And if the gods expect, how much more so mortals wrapped in robes of silk and smiles of honey? Laron wrote a new tablet, his own wisdom etched beside Malak's tale. "Let every gift be weighed like gold, not in its gleam, but in its gravity. What it asks of your spirit, your loyalty, your freedom. The wise do not reject gifts. They see them fully, and in seeing, they decide whether the weight is worth the glow." This tablet was placed beside the story of Malak, forming a new teaching for generations. In time, Babylon became more cautious. Not colder, just wiser. Traders who gave too freely were met with raised brows. "What do you seek in return?" became a common phrase, not out of distrust but understanding. The city grew richer, not only in coin, but in clarity. For in a world where gifts could enslave, truth was the greatest liberation. And so, from the clay hands of Malak to the inked wisdom of Laron, the tale endured, whispered in the marketplace, taught in schools, echoed in temples. Ask what lies beneath the gift, they would say, for it is not the hand that gives, but the silence that follows which writes the debt. Thus Babylon taught not only how to prosper, but how to remain free in a world full of golden chains. In the twilight of his years, Malak wandered once more through the marketplace, not as a potter, but as a man of stories. Children gathered around him, their eyes wide, their hands still dusty with clay and dreams. "Tell us again of the gift," they begged. And he did, not to frighten, but to awaken. "It is not the gift itself," he told them, "but the blindness it creates that turns freedom into debt." A boy asked, "But what if the giver means no harm?" Malak smiled gently. "Then the giver must speak with clarity. Gifts given in silence are like rivers with hidden currents. The danger lies not in the water, but in the depth we never measured." Babylon was full of such rivers. Contracts disguised as kindness, loans hidden behind handshakes. The boy nodded, holding the lesson like a precious coin. In the upper quarters of the city, nobles began to see change. Fewer people accepted their tokens. Fewer bowed with gratitude. A sense of quiet respect replaced the old games of influence. Babylon is becoming shrewd. One noble remarked bitterly, but another replied, no, Babylon is becoming free. The power once held through favors now crumbled under the light of awareness. Among scribes and merchants, new customs emerged. State the terms, they'd say when offered something of value. Write what is owed. What once flowed through unspoken expectation now had to pass through the gate of truth. And though some grumbled that the warmth of Babylon was fading, others saw it differently. Clarity, said a scribe, is the truest form of kindness. One day, Laron student, now a man grown, faced a test. A wealthy patron offered to sponsor his school in return for just a little influence in the curriculum. He paused, remembering Malak and the bracelet, the farmer and the grain. If I say yes, he thought, my students will learn not wisdom, but loyalty to coin. He declined, and though he lost funding, he kept his freedom, and with it, the soul of his teaching. That same night, under the stars, he carved his own tablet. Let no gift silence your truth. Let no favor rewrite your integrity. He placed it on the wall where his students gathered, beside a worn copy of Malak's tale. It became a new tradition in his school. Every student must write, in their own words, what they owe and what they must never sell. And so, freedom passed from one generation to the next. In the temples, prayers changed subtly. Bless me, they once said, with gold and favor. But now many whispered instead, bless me with wisdom to know the cost of every blessing. Even the gods seemed pleased, for true reverence was not in sacrifice, but in discernment. Babylon's soul had shifted, from one that desired much to one that understood the value of what was already held. Malak, now old and slow, passed one final message to a young potter like he once was. The greatest clay, he said, is not what you shape with your hands, but what you shape with your choices. Each gift is a mold, but only you decide if it becomes a vessel or a cage. The boy listened and would carry that wisdom into every deal, every offer, every silence that followed. And thus, Babylon's prosperity grew not just in riches, but in restraint. In a city once built by gold, the new foundations were wisdom and will. And though temptation never vanished, the people had gained a shield stronger than law, understanding. For they had learned that the greatest debts were not paid in silver, but in silence and surrender. And from the corners of clay shops to the columns of temples, the tale echoed still. The gift you do not question is the debt you already carry. And so the people of Babylon asked, listened, and chose, no longer bound by kindness wrapped in silence, but free, because they had remembered the tale of Malak, the debt that began with a gift and the wisdom that ended it. Generations passed, and Malak's name became legend, not for his craft, but for his clarity. His story was no longer just a tale told at dusk. It was etched into Babylon's foundation. When a father gifted his son a tool, he would add, and this is given with nothing owed. When a merchant made an offer, he would declare, let our agreement be spoken, not assumed. Thus, Babylon breathed a rare air, an honesty born not from law, but from collective memory. A new ruler came to power, wise yet young. She had heard of Malak's parable and sought to understand it beyond words. Why did a simple gift bind a man? She asked her advisors. One answered, because he believed it free. Another said, because he did not ask the price. But an old woman in court, a retired servant, offered the truest answer, because he felt gratitude, but did not question what came with it. The queen was silent. She understood. To honor the wisdom of the past, she decreed that all gifts given within the city walls must be declared with intent. Say why you give. Say what you expect. If it is truly a gift, expect nothing. If not, speak the price. Many protested. This is not our way. But she replied, it is now. Babylon will not prosper on secrets. And so the custom became law, and the law became culture. In the schools, children recited a simple phrase. Nothing given is without meaning, nothing accepted without thought. Teachers taught them the signs, how to recognize hidden debts, how to question kindness, how to weigh a smile. Some worried it would breed suspicion, but the opposite occurred. Relationships grew stronger, not weaker. Trust flourished when clarity ruled. In the marketplace, one might hear, "This is a gift, and I want nothing." Or, "I offer this, and in return, I ask your loyalty." The words were no longer hidden. Choices became informed. And when someone declined a gift, it was no insult. It was respected. For Babylon had learned the difference between generosity and bondage, between a blessing and a burden. A young scribe wrote a new proverb. Gifts are not evil. It is silence that turns sweetness into poison. His words travel far, crossing deserts and rivers. Other cities listened, learned, and some laughed. Babylon fears its own kindness, they scoffed. But in time, they too began to question what their gifts cost them. For Babylon's wisdom spread like a steady flame, quiet, persistent, and impossible to extinguish. In Malek's old workshop, now a place of learning, a pot stood at the center. It bore no decoration, only an inscription. He returned the gift. Tourists and scholars came to see it, not because it was beautiful, but because it was true. For in that simple act, Malek had lit a fire that no empire could extinguish. He had reminded the world that the greatest protection from chains is the courage to say, "I will not be bound." One evening, as a storm rolled over the plains, an old woman sat by a fire, telling her grandchildren the tale. The gift was gold, she said, but the chain was silence. The children listened, wide-eyed. "And what did he do, grandmother?" one asked. She smiled. "He gave it back. And in doing so, he took back his life." The story, told 1,000 times, never lost its power, because it was not just about Babylon. It was about all of us. The debt that began with a gift was no longer a mystery. It had a name, unspoken obligation. And the people of Babylon, once bound by it, became its conquerors, not with swords, but with questions, not with defiance, but with discernment. They remembered Malek, not for rejecting generosity, but for demanding honesty. And in doing so, they taught the world a truth that echoed beyond time. So if you, too, receive a gift, pause. Look not at the shine, but at the silence behind it. Ask what is expected, what might be asked tomorrow. For the chains of today often begin with the kindness of yesterday. And those who walk freely are not those who take nothing, but those who understand everything they accept.